A new addition to non-basketball moves this season is the rip-through, specifically in regards to an offensive player moving the ball upward in a direction away from the basket. Here, the highlighted offensive player, Shai Gilgeous-Alexander, abruptly swings his arms through the right arm of his defender, Kessler Edwards, to initiate contact. But since Gilgeous-Alexander moved the ball upward in a direction away from the basket, this was not considered a legitimate shot attempt, but instead a non-basketball move, and therefore the ruling on this play was a no call and a play-on situation. Another example of a rip-through move can be seen here. The highlighted offensive player, Mikal Bridges, starts his move by ripping through the left arm of the defender, J.T. Thor. As this is deemed to be a legitimate basketball play by Bridges, the contact should result in a non-shooting foul by Thor. The replays show that Bridges swung his arms from left to right as he sought to drive by Thor in a basketball manner when the illegal contact occurred, and a defensive foul on Thor was needed here. The next section is flopping, and on this first example, the highlighted defender, Zaire Williams, is defending the dribbler, Malcolm Brogdon. But following minimal contact with Brogdon, Williams launched himself backwards, falling to the floor, while also throwing his arms up in an exaggerated and theatrical manner that was inconsistent with the nature of the contact. As the reaction is both exaggerated and theatrical, a flop was correctly called here, and a non-unsportsmanlike technical foul was assessed. Watch the contact on the screen on this next play closely. The highlighted defensive player, Caris LeVert, attempts to move around the screen set by the offensive player, Dante DiVincenzo. We can see that there is minimal contact between the two players, but LeVert falls to the floor in an exaggerated and theatrical manner that is inconsistent with the contact on the play. A flop should have been called on this play, and a non-unsportsmanlike technical foul needed to be assessed. Now, let's look at some examples where a flopping penalty would not be assessed. Here, the highlighted offensive player, Michael Porter Jr., attempts a three-point field goal, and the defensive player, Dillon Brooks, challenges the shot. We can see that there is minimal hand contact by Brooks after the shot is released, and Porter sits down in a reflexive action to that contact. As Porter's fall to the floor is not exaggerated and it is not theatrical, no flopping penalty was needed nor assessed here. On the final example in this section, the highlighted defensive player, Mike Muscala, is guarding his opponent, Bam Adebayo, in the post. As Adebayo moves into Muscala's body in an attempt to create space, Muscala absorbs the marginal contact from Adebayo, and he then goes down to the floor. Note that the reaction by Muscala here was not exaggerated, nor was it theatrical, and therefore no flop was needed or assessed. The next point of education to review is transition take fouls. Following the missed shot, the highlighted player, Larry Nance Jr., fouls his opponent, Nickeil Alexander-Walker, immediately after the change of possession, but before Alexander-Walker has the opportunity to advance the ball. Per the rule, this was correctly deemed to be a transition take foul, and the penalty of one free throw plus possession was assessed. Now let's look at an example of a defensive foul that would not be ruled a transition take foul. Here, the defensive player, Tyus Jones, makes a legitimate attempt to steal the ball from the dribbler, Desmond Bane, and in doing so, he makes illegal contact, and the defensive foul is correctly called. We can see that Jones had not given up on the play, and that he did make a legitimate attempt to play defense, so this was correctly ruled a common foul and not a transition take foul. Our next section is bench conduct. These first two clips show teams spontaneously standing to celebrate a play on the floor. These are legal reactions, and no penalties would be assessed on the examples shown here. Again, to be clear, bench players and assistant coaches may legally stand up to spontaneously celebrate a play on the floor, but they then must sit back down on the bench in a reasonable amount of time. Respect for the game remains a point of education. This first play is an example of a reaction that exceeds the respect for the game guidelines. The highlighted player, Benedict Mathurin, commits an overt gesture in resentment to the foul call. This type of overt gesture will be met with a technical foul as it exceeds the respect for the game guidelines, whether it is directed towards an official or not. This next play will show another reaction that exceeds the respect for the game guidelines. Following the traveling violation, the highlighted player, Norman Powell, slams the ball off the floor. As we know, players are allowed to react to calls with which they disagree, provided the reaction is not overly demonstrative, disrespectful, or prolonged. That is not the case here, however, and a technical foul was correctly assessed. Another example of actions that exceed the respect for the game guidelines can be seen here. Following the made three-point field goal, the highlighted player, Anthony Black, forcefully throws the ball against the basket support. Players are not allowed to forcefully throw or kick the ball against the basket support for any reason. Any violation of this rule will result in a technical foul. We will conclude the video with a series of examples showing positive interactions between players and officials. The players and officials seen here maintain their composure and they communicate with each other in a calm and professional manner. It is our continuing goal that both our players and our officials demonstrate this type of mutual respect toward each other on a nightly basis.